There are battles everyone knows: Stalingrad, Kursk, Berlin, but there's one that was kept silent for decades, even though the scale of its losses surpasses many of them. January 1942. The Red Army had just driven the Germans back from Moscow, but the enemy hadn't gone far. They had entrenched themselves in a bridgehead that military historians would call a pistol, aimed at the heart of Russia, the Rzhev salient. From here, the Germans could strike Moscow again at any moment, and Stalin gave the order: eliminate the threat at any cost. These words "at any cost" would become the death knell for hundreds of thousands of soldiers. In fact, the Battle of Rzhev wasn't a single battle. It consisted of four massive offensive operations, separated by pauses of several weeks or months. The first was Rzhev, winter-spring 1942. The second was the summer offensive on Sikevka. The third was in the fall of the same year. And the bloodiest was Operation Mars in November-December 1942, for attempts to break through the German defenses, for waves crashing on concrete. The Germans prepared for defense thoroughly: tens of kilometers of trenches, thousands of pillboxes, and several layers of minefields. The 9th German Army was commanded by General Walter Model, one of the Wehrmacht's finest defenders and a master of firefighting operations. He received Hitler's order. Rzhev was not to be surrendered, and Model carried it out with meticulous cruelty. The first Rzhev operation, January 8–April 20, 1942. Our troops advanced 80 to 250 kilometers, liberating the Moscow and Tula regions. But the goal encircling Army Group Center was not achieved. Casualties. According to official figures, approximately 770,000. Of these, 272,000 were irrecoverable. But the most terrifying episode lay ahead. November 1942. The whole world looks to Stalingrad, where the fate of the war is being decided. But an equally large-scale battle is being prepared in the central sector. Operation Mars. Commander, Georgy Zhukov. The goal is to destroy Model's 9th Army and completely eliminate the Rzhev salient. Two fronts are participating in the Operation Kalinin and Western. Nearly 700,000 men, 1,700 tanks, thousands of guns. But there's one detail that hasn't been discussed for a long time. The Germans knew about the offensive. Soviet intelligence was running a highly complex radio game codenamed Monastery. Agent Hein aka Alexander Demyanov was transmitting information to the Germans. According to one theory, Stavka deliberately leaked information about Operation Mars to distract the Germans from the real attack Stalingrad. The offensive began on November 25th, and immediately confrontational tank battles, fortified defensive positions, counterattacks. Model committed reserves to the battle: 3 tank divisions, which were just preparing to be transferred to Stalingrad. The defenses failed to break through. By December 20th, the offensive had petered out. Soviet losses in Operation Mars are still controversial. Official figures put the number at around 70,000 killed and 150,000 wounded. American historian David Glantz puts the figure at 100,000 killed and 235,000 wounded. The Germans lost around 40,000 men. Operation Mars was Zhukov's greatest defeat, but Soviet historiography kept a muted account of this. It was too inconvenient a truth. It's impossible to talk about the Battle of Rzhev without recalling one of its most tragic chapters: the fate of the 33rd Army and its commander, Mikhail Efremov. February 1942. The 33rd Army broke through to Vyazma, but the Germans closed the gap. The army found itself encircled. A plane was sent for the general. Stalin personally ordered the evacuation of the army commander, but Efremov refused. "I came here with the soldiers, and I'll leave with them." Only the unit banners and the seriously wounded flew to Moscow. In April, the remnants of the army broke out. Efremov was seriously wounded. He couldn't walk. To avoid capture, he shot himself. A little over 800 men escaped the encirclement. The Germans, having found the general's body, buried him with military honors. This story remained in the shadows for many years. They didn't like to talk about failures. By early 1943, the situation had changed. Stalingrad had fallen. The Germans needed reserves. Holding the enormous salient, which required 29 divisions, had become a luxury. Model received orders to retreat to pre-prepared positions, cutting off the salient. The operation was called Buffalo. The Germans retreated methodically, leaving scorched earth in their wake. They mined everything: houses, wells, roads. They drove away the population. They burned villages. On March 3, 1943, our troops entered Rzhev. The city was practically non-existent. Senior Special Department Commissioner Pavel Konovalov recalled, "The city was deserted. There were no people, no livestock, no birds to be seen. Some houses had broken windows, while others were destroyed. More than 200 residents, elderly people, women, and children were found in the church. The Germans locked them in and mined the church. Sappers arrived just in time. Only 150 people out of the pre-war population of 20,000 remained in liberated Rzhev. So, what were the losses at Rzhev? Official data, declassified in the post-Soviet era. The total losses of the Red Army in operations in the Rzhev salient from January 1940 to March 1943 were 1,342,000. Of these, irrecoverable losses killed, missing, captured amounted to 605,000. However, many historians consider these figures to be underestimates. Svetlana Gerasimova, author of the fundamental study The Rzhev Massacre, puts the total loss figure at 2.3 million. The Germans lost approximately 670,000 men. So why did we pay such a price? Firstly, the Rzhev salient truly threatened Moscow. As long as it existed, the capital could not feel safe. Secondly, and perhaps most importantly, these battles tied down 29 German divisions. The very same divisions that could have been redeployed to Stalingrad or the Caucasus. When the Germans retreated from Rzhev, they freed up 22 divisions, but it was too late. The Battle of Stalingrad was won. For many years, people preferred not to talk about the Battle of Rzhev. The price was too terrible. There were too few resounding victories. But in 2020, a grand memorial to the Soviet soldier was unveiled near Rzhev. A 25-meter-tall figure on a burial mound. A sculpture in which the features of Tverdovsky and that very same nameless soldier, killed near Rzhev in a nameless swamp, are discernible. At the base are slabs with the names of those who have been identified. Thousands of them, and tens of thousands more names await. Do you know what's most terrifying about the Battle of Rzhev? It's not just the numbers. It's not just the million dead. The most terrifying thing is that most of them remain nameless. 80 years later, search teams are still finding the remains of soldiers in those forests. They're raising them from swamps, from craters, from the trenches where they met their death. And often not a single document. Not a medallion, not a death tag. Only a decayed Red Army service record book, crumbled to dust, or an empty cartridge case from a death medallion and ebonite case where soldiers placed a note with their personal information. Superstition was stronger than orders. Many didn't fill out the medallions, fearing that doing so would bring death. The Battle of Rzhev wasn't a victory in the traditional sense. We didn't take Berlin. We didn't raise the flag. We simply stood our ground. Month after month, attack after attack, we ground down the German divisions, preventing them from retreating to Stalingrad. We did our job as soldiers. But the price was monstrous.